You know, it's kind of interesting. Steve mentioned this morning that the best is for last, and when he said that, I thought, I'm in the middle. But then it dawned on me, it's only the first day, so I'm really not in the middle. Sometimes the best laid plans don't work out just like we think. And it's a great thing to be here and love sharing things with everybody. One of the first things that a few years ago, I was at that plateau. We heard about that earlier this morning. And very frustrating when you bump against the wall, you can't get through. So I decided if I was going to do this, I didn't feel comfortable doing it by myself. So I need a team. I was thinking in my mind, the team's bound to be better than me. So I started developing a team. I thought, well, you know, I could be a demo farm. So the next day I was getting a pickup worked on. I was at the Chevrolet house, and they had a new demonstrator, Camaro. And well, I kind of liked that. So my nickname in high school was Crash. So speed's not always your friend. But anyhow, I said, hey, what about the demo? Can I take that out? I'm thinking about a project. He said, sure. So he said, but I need to go with you. I said, fine. So we get out on the road, and I just let that baby rip. And he's over there hanging on. He said, what the hell are you doing? I said, well, it's a demo. You say it'll go 0 to 85 in so many seconds. How do I know? Just because what you said. So that's what I wanted to do with my farm. Everybody talks about how much water we're going to use growing a cover crop. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and say we're not going to use no water. But I think you'll be surprised at some of the results we're seeing. So instead of me saying, well, you know, I'm planting cover crop and it doesn't use any water and it's neutral, and so we want to prove that. And it's all about the future and the next generation. This is my little 3-year-old grandson. He's eat up with agriculture. Great. My son probably can run a front end loader and equipment as good as I can or better than I can. But he didn't care about ag. He loves the cattle, he hated the farming. So he's in the medical field, essentially because my dad had cancer. They missed his radiation a little too much, got radiation poisoning. Didn't turn out very good. My son said, I want to do that. It's great. But Owen's the next generation. And it's very rewarding that he's eat up. We're looking at residue here in this shot. You know, and that's what we got to fix. We do a bad job in agriculture promoting the next generation. We want to do like Bo, I'm going to shove them off to the medical field or lawyer or make television movies. Where the big bucks are at. So I think as a whole we do a terrible job at that. And so I want to try to share that. And this year we're going to implement some youth tours. Instead of having you guys come learn about soil health, I want to get the next generation involved. So, as I started putting the team together, I thought through this really hard. This is the second field day we had. I want you to look, here's some of my partners, not all of them. Some of them are here today. NRCS, USDA, Steve, State Soil Scientist, Gary O'Neill, State Conservation has really been a big help. My local DC, we were just talking about back in the back a minute ago. Great DC, but he's really kind of private and kind of quiet. Doesn't like to talk. If you shoved him up here, he would be like a post. This was 4 years ago. Now he wants to talk about soil health. He comes to my place every 2 weeks. Every photograph you see today, probably 90% of them Paul took. Great partner. Also, OACD, Conservation Districts, Commission, John Deere, Western Equipment. And everybody asked me, said, John Deere, why would they be your partner? Well, what's the deal? I said, they got great water sensing probes, temperature probes. Odd? No, it's a great program. It's worked very well for us. But they're also a big supporter in the Soil Health Initiative. The one here on the left, Bank 7. You know who that is? That's my banker. And we all know today, you better involve the banker. You know what the neatest thing about Bank 7 is now? Guess who's growing cover crops? Banker Frank. So when I go in and say I'm going to plant 1,500 acres of cover crops this year and I'm going to need X, Frank says, no problem. Can you order mine too? And we talk about what we done wrong. Keith asked me, he said, don't always talk about the good things. Steve had me plant some out of the window, wrong time. We thought it would work. Total disaster. Did we learn? Yeah, we learned. It's a great thing. But partners is really a good thing. Next set of slides here, I really want you to focus on this bare piece of dirt. Now, you can see here in the background, here's John Deere and their probe. This is a temperature probe here. Back behind Colita, our Conservation District Secretary here, is another temperature probe. There's another soil scientist to help pull the cores that you're going to see, Troy, here in a little bit. This is a field day we had. This was in a field that was disastered out wheat in the big drought. And I mean the big drought. I really understand what Granddad talked about in the 30s, because that year we only had like 9 inches. You see, we disastered the wheat out. The first little shower we got, I planted a cover crop. And that year, that was about a 9-way blend. But here we are, and I think this was July 8th, and we're burning up. But this square was kind of an afterthought, because I bought these probes mainly for my irrigated land to really track my water and the best use of my water, where it was in the profile. And I told John Deere, I said, we're doing this cover crop thing. How about putting it on some of these dry line spots? And he said, well, it's really not designed for that. Really? It tracks moisture and yeah, he said that we'll make that work. So we done this. But when I was putting it in, I thought, holy crap, I missed it. Because really what I need is a check spot. So I got 2 young boys that work for me. They're 22. I think it's pretty young. We got some hose and rakes, and we come out here and we cut that cover crop off right after we planted it to represent a no-till strip. But it really wasn't a strip, it's about the size of a pickup. This is in the spring. This is another partner. Jim, where are you at? Yeah, Jim Johnston. He was at our field day in July when we had that. He came out in the spring, and now we're still dry, and this wheat looks terrible. I think it looks terrible. It was. And we walked out in this field, and I never said nothing to Jim. And immediately he said, what's that? He said, that's that spot. I said, yeah. He said, what's going on there? And I said, I don't know. Haven't treated it no different. The only difference is the cover crop. Same wheat, same starter fertilizer. We didn't plow. One of my neighbors said, well, did it rain different there? And I said, oh yeah, this localized event went around that 12 by 12 spot. Remember, this won't work. So immediately Jim said, well, there's something going on. And he just so happened he had his soil test probe with him. He goes to the pickup, he gets it, he comes out, and he pushes down, and he said, well, you got a restriction. No, Jim, I don't. I know this farm. Yeah, Jimmy, there is. He pulled it out, he turned it upside down, he said, it's dry dirt. Really? Well, it was. He walked outside of that square. How many times did you probe down, Jim? 3, 4, 5? Several. No dry dirt, all the way in. Immediately he said, let's get NRCS to come out and pull some cores. This is a little bit later. Still see that spot right there? And that's another thing I've learned. Always take the picture from the same location. You know, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just so excited I can still see this spot. Now the wheat looks better than it did a little bit ago, but it's still not very good. So we're looking at the probes now. This is the soil moisture, and you'll see over here at the beginning, we're even money. And we're at 15 and maybe a tenth or two over moisture. As the cover crop starts developing, look at the separation. It's evaporation. It's so easy to see water when it's raining. And it's so dang hard to see it going up. Now, everybody asked me about this here little check. What that is, that's a rain event. It rained, if you look, about a ½ inch. But the key there is, even though it rained a ½ inch, did them lines come together? No, because we're a ½ inch short already. So we're still at a deficit. Now here's the temperature. And you can see over here the air temperature is the blue, the middle is the stubble, and the green is the cover crop. But what we notice is when we get above 100 degrees, we really start seeing a big significance in temperature. Well, easily, I've done this 4 years now, easily it's 20, 25 degrees a day. If you got a good cover versus wheat stubble, bare ground, whatever you want to. Stubble helps a little, and you can look at a stubble field and say, man, I've got great stubble out there, good protection. Get you a drone, fly over that and look straight down, and there's dirt everywhere. It's not as good protection as you think. Now, this is the core we pulled out inside the bare ground. You see the line right there, and that's what Jim was hitting that day at 16 inches. This is the wheat inside that bare spot. Boy, don't that look like a winner. Now this is outside. See the line right there? And we're doing this again this year, and we're trying to do a better job. That's a tape measure on there. Of course, that backfired, you can't see. But it was at 33 inches when we hit dry dirt. The only difference in this field is a cover crop. And it wasn't a localized rain event either. Neighbor still thinks that's funny. This is the wheat where the cover crop was. You can see some residue still on the ground, but now remember, and I done this talk in New Mexico, and their big concern out there was we only get 12, 14 inches. And I said, well, done been there, done that, less than that. That cover crop literally never got more than this tall. And burnt, I had trouble killing it because it was so stressed out. Still see that spot right there? Now the whole field made 32 bushel that year. God was very good to us. We got a little rain in the spring. But that spot still looked terrible, and all my neighbors' wheat, and I can say God bless my neighbors, and they're not here. I looked around. Their wheat looked just like that square. Now, my local DC and I done a very scientific thing that day. He said, how are we going to look at the heads? I said, I don't know what you got in mind. And he said, why don't you walk out in the square, close your eyes, and reach down and grab a head. And then do that 3 times. And I'll do the same outside. And every time we've done that, this is what we found. Now everybody's wanting to know, right here's the tattletale. We took them cores back to the lab. Troy weighed them and dried them out. Cover crop, bare dirt. 3 inches more water. It rained 9 that year. I had a third of it more where the cover crop was. Wow. Now, you know, that was the first year we done that. This year, what we're doing is I left out a 30-foot strip completely through the field. Didn't even plant. You can see the wheat stubble there. Now we're pulling cores 3 times this year instead of once. Now, this year was an exceptionally good year in Oklahoma, and we made lots and lots of forage on this with a 14-way blend that you see here. So a lot of my friends and neighbors are saying, if I'm going to spend $20, $30 an acre for cover crop seed, how am I going to get that back? Everybody's worried. How many of you are worried about the cost? Yep. And how many is worried about how do I recover the cost? Okay, I'm going to talk about that in the next segment. So we graze this. But now here's what we found. If I graze that, instead of killing it at 45 or 50 days, we let that go longer, and some of it went to start reproductive mode. The first cores that we've done pulled, and I don't have them all the data yet, we're just building that, we're 3 inches behind because we let it grow longer and grazed it. And you'll see in a minute the results of that grazing. I think you'll like it, but I'm telling you, there's different ways to look at how much moisture you're using. If you're just going to grow a cover crop, keep it from evaporating, keep it from washing, trying to infiltrate water, and kill it in 45 or 50 days, you're not going to use much water. You let that go much longer than that and graze it and take some money, and some pretty good money. Nothing in this world is free. You're going to use a little bit more water. Keep that in mind. But now, I will tell you that we're seeing 3-inch deficit. Now we're infiltrating more, and I think by the time we get around to next spring, when we pull them cores, we're going to be back where we was. We're going to be ahead because we captured a lot more. But once again, that's only Jimmy thinking, and I'll prove that right or wrong a little bit later. So that's kind of the first segment of what we're doing in the demo. I've got lots of things going on, and I think I got a friend says, do you wake up in the middle of the night thinking what you're going to do next? And I said, sometimes I can't sleep because I'm excited, especially when I come home from places like this. The next thing we're working on is I have a canola in my rotation. I have had canola in my rotation. The drought's been very hard on canola. First of all, getting it planted and getting it to survive. Now, I'm no-tilling, and that creates a bigger problem. Some of my neighbors and friends, they want to burn their residue to plant it. I'm not doing that. I've seen stuff blow away, and it works, but not for me. I bought a vertical tillage disc one year to try to make this work. I've traded that off. I don't have that no more. It worked. I got canola in. But the sacrifice was greater than the reward. It's just like I was telling my neighbor, we were talking the other day at the bank, and he was an older gentleman. He's 89. Tornado came through Leedy in 1947. It was devastating. And I said, you know, that's just like plowing. And he said, well, what are you talking about, Jimmy? I said, tell me the events that happened in Leedy when the tornado went. He said, well, it come through, it devastated the north half of town. Blew everything away. Killed some people. He said, we spent the next 4 months gathering debris up, reorganizing before we could even start building. I said, that's what I'm talking about. The earthworms and the microbes are just like a town. Streets, water pipes, electricity, all the byways and pathways they have. And when you plow, it's like a tornado coming through. And so they spend the next several months rebuilding their structure. The only thing is, we have a tornado come through 3 or 4 times a year for them. And every time we kill some. And he said, you know, I've never thought of that way. I said, more people need to think of it. So we decided, here's some wheat stubble. Like I say, it was the same year, short wheat stubble, but still too much to no-till canola in probably and have good success. So we want to plant an all broadleaf cover crop. Why all broadleaves? Because they're high in sugar. We're going to, I like to get back at my son Bo once in a while when Owen gets ready to go home. A big Hershey candy bar and a Dr. Pepper on the way home drives my son crazy. Because Owen is so wired up. The same way with microbes. You feed them the sugar, they go nuts. And when they go nuts, they eat more. And so they will consume the residue. So we've been trying that. This is a few weeks later. We had 9 broadleaves in there, anywhere from sugar beets to sunflowers to 2 or 3 kinds of beans and peas, lots of legumes. This is a little bit later. Once again, we're still in the drought. You see all these leaves rolled up. Now, this group that's here, these are Australians. Now are some of my best friends. They live in a small town in Western Australia called Esperance, which is not far from Perth. It's only about that far on their map. The reason they came to our farm is they live in a 15-inch rainfall, and they raise 60 bushel wheat and they want to grow 80 or 90. And I'm still trying to figure out how they grow 60 bushels on that. But it does rain timely there. But they want to introduce cover crops. And like most of us have been, or they don't know how that's going to work because of the water. They don't have any extra. So they were here that year. And like I said, we're really good friends. Some of them are now trying some cover crops. Well, I double click. That fall, it was so dry we couldn't plant wheat. Couldn't plant canola, so I planted wheat a little bit later. Now, one of the reasons, it's always, and we had a question earlier about landlords and tenants. How I got this farm was about 20 years ago when I was some younger and quite a bit smaller. I stopped by this lady's house, and she was in her 70s then. I said, if you ever decide to change tenants, I would be interested. I'm not here to rent your farm today. I just want to let you know I'm a half mile up the road. If you ever decide to. About 8 years later, her son came to me. She was in the nursing home. He said, we just discovered that our tenant's been stealing from us. We had on crop share. Mother said, you ask her, we want to rent to you. But we don't want you to grow any feed, milo. They had a list of things they thought were hard on the soil. So I thought, I can't plant millet, da-da-da, cover crop, I'll use all broadleaf and we'll try that project. But Jimmy just didn't get the drill quite cleaned out. And there is just a little bit of millet in there because I want to make a point. And you can see, if you could zoom in on that, very little wheat left. They devoured residue. The system will work, but why you always want to have that carbon to nitrogen ratio balanced is you want to feed them microbes through the year. I tell a lot of people, they're like my cows. I can dump out 3 pounds of cake a day if I'm caking them, and they'll eat that. Or I can have the switch hang and I can dump out 6 or 8 pounds in a pile and they'll eat that. Or if I trip and fall with a sack of cake and dump out 50 pounds, they'll eat that. It's the same way with microbes and earthworms. If it's there, they're going to eat it. And if you knock it down where they can get to it, they'll eat it. So it's always nice to have something standing up out there to feed later. But you can see all them broadleafs, there's just a few little sticks sticking up, very little on the ground. We don't want to do this very often because we're sacrificing to do that. But for the rotation sometimes, we'll do that. All right, this is harvest time. Now, all our plots, we put in-ramp strips in them because we're also trying to prove what we've been talking about earlier today about fertilization. But also, I grid all my land and soil test every 2 years so I know where I'm at. This particular plot showed we need no top dress. And OSU is another partner with us. Jason Warren come out, we run the Green Seeker, and he said, well, probably don't need it because naked eye doesn't show it. Sure enough, it didn't. But now across the road, the same level field, there's a highway, splits this. The soil test still called for quite a bit of N. So I want to do that because that's what we've been taught, and we're not got that project over. So I spent $40 an acre to top dress that wheat. When we harvest that wheat, and I got yield monitors on the combines, and then when I haul it to the elevator, each field's weighed separately so I know. This field right here made 54 bushels. I only had a 9 pound of N in the starter fertilizer and some phosphorus and some microbe mix starter, and that was it. Across the road, same starter fertilizer, $40 a top dress, I made 53 bushels. Now, does that answer y'all's question, how a cover crop, how can I get some of that money back? I spent 20. If you want to figure some drilling in there, maybe another 10. I made 10. Made actually 1 more bushel of wheat, so at that time it was more than 430 now. It's probably 550 or 6 then. Just something to think about. That's another part of what we're doing. I really think the longer we go, the better that will be. This has been we're in the 4th year, Steve, of this project, the demo. I'd still like to step on the gas once in a while and see what it'll do. But now, all my partners, they always want to push me to something new. And normally it's not a very hard push. It's like, well, sure, let's try it. Let's start implementing some cattle. So here's some mix from green cover that we got that year. This is Paul, my DC. He laughs. He said, every time I take a picture, I get my foot. It just bugs the crap out of him that he gets his feet in. But I think it's kind of neat. You can see the cover crops coming up there. Doesn't look very good, but it really gets thicker. Every time we do this, we put a probe in. Here's the moisture probe. There's temperature out here and temperature here. This was in canola. We had a hailstorm after we swathed. Hailstorms are not friendly to canola where they're standing up in the windrow. So you see lots of volunteer there. But this is a few weeks later. This is on the South Canadian river bottom. My granddad come there in 1926 from Texas. Great granddad had 11 boys and 2 girls. And so when they became of age, there wasn't enough farm in Snyder, Oklahoma, or Mountain Park. And so he started scattering everybody out. He'd take a little dab of cash and drive, and they come to this farm in 1926. Granddad rented it, bought it in 33. So a few weeks later, now typically we'd like to let that grow 40, 45, 50 days. But what I like about the diversity, and a lot of you know this, you can see the buckwheat's done doing its thing there. Actually in this field, we had the buckwheat, it went to seed, it rained, the seed come back up, It grew again, it bloomed, and I grew 2 crops by accident within the same field this year of the buckwheat. Some say it's a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing for me. Now, when Steve asked me about putting cattle in, he said, instead of just turning them out, and we've heard about the rotational grazing, he said, I really want you to paddock graze them down through there. Now, we talked a little bit about Ginger, and Ginger and I have a great relationship. Unlike your relationship, we get to vote, and my vote counts. And I said, we're gonna put these cattle in there. Probably, the first year was 6 acres. We changed that paddock size a little this year. And we're gonna move them every 3 days. Now, I do quite a bit of this, and I'm on too many boards. I'm gone quite a bit. Ginger loves the cattle, the boys. And she said, how are we gonna do that? Yeah, and I said, well, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. And I said, you always say we're Democrat society and we can vote. And I vote we do it. And she says, I vote we don't. I said, we're a tie. And she said, yeah. Read your Robert Rules of Order. The chairman can make or break a tie, and I'm the chairman. Kind of afraid to ask. She said, explain to me why we're going to do this. And I said, we're all about building organic matter. We're all about building soil health. And you're always on me to get more money to the bank. I think we can accomplish that. And she actually broke the tie, and we tried it. This is what we done. And I had another partner with the NRCS, grazing land specialist, Denise Turner, came down and helped me decide the first year, because I didn't know how to do this, what to do. Her and Paul measured. We had nearly 7,000 pounds of forage out there. We only wanted to take about 25% of that, because I'm still trying to build this farm up, and I'm going to show you what we've done here in a little bit for that. Now, I am a cow-calf guy. We run, right now we got about 280 cows we're growing back. So I wanted to put some cow-calf pairs out there, because of all the fields I've got cows nearly beside them all. So it's real easy to turn them in. But the stalker side of me wanted some calves. So we weaned some calves, fall calving calves, and they weighed 663. The calves on the cows weighed 536. We knew how much total weight we had, and we decided on 11-acre paddocks, stock density, because remember, I'm trying to build this farm up. This farm, I had no-till wheat on for 5 years continuous. It was in alfalfa 9 years. So I'd haul off everything. I won't do that again. I'll still raise some alfalfa, but I won't keep it in that long. We're gonna move them every 3 days, maybe 4, because the paddocks kind of change a little bit. We're gonna watch that. But look how good we were. I tell Paul and Denise, I can't believe we only used 22%, we want to use 25. Wow, that's pretty good. I kind of bragged on her. She said, well, it comes down to math. You must have been pretty close to what your cows weighed. We know what your calves weighed. Here's what we found out. In 39 days, we had 60 acres here, the 42 head of calves, and what we done, Steve helped me with this. He looked at Oklahoma City's national stockyards. We picked that price when we put them in there at $1.97. Come out, we figured $1.90. We moved them calves forward $101 and some change. That's the weaning calves. The cow calves, look at this. They moved $203. They gained 2.9 pounds a day. The stockers gained 2, which is good. I mean, I'm happy in an August, September time frame my stockers will gain 2 pounds. My neighbor immediately said, that's wrong. There's no way 2.9. I said, okay, you're probably right. I found if I argue with them, I'll lose every time. And I said, so a cow's milk, what do you think that's worth? I don't know, probably a pound. Huh, you add a pound to that stalker weight? He said, I'll be darned. That's right. So when you figure that all up, it's $115 an acre in 39 days. Investment of $20 seed, $10 worth of drilling. We got to work, we're pretty good putting poly fence up now too. We've been doing it 2 years, 3 years. We can do that pretty quick. We can put out a quarter mile and pick one up in 15, 20 minutes, move the water over. That's a good way to get some of your money back, but you're also going to use some water doing that. But you're going to really improve your soil health. You're going to put some manure back in the ground. You're going to trample some of that down, but you're still going to leave some standing up. This picture here, my father-in-law just had his 76th birthday. Jack's always been a clean till farmer. The cleaner the better. Raised cotton. My granddad was a big cotton guy. I kind of like cotton. We don't raise cotton anymore, but I still like it. I'm planting wheat here. This is back in the north side of that same field in the first paddock. Now, because we only took 25%, that stuff really regrew back because it took us nearly a month to get through. And so I'm drilling there, and he's coming after a load of seed wheat, and he said, I'm pulling a drill after, and he said, well, what are you doing? I said, I'm planting wheat. I wish you guys could see my father-in-law's look. When they talk about that commercial, it's priceless. And now I'm the #1 son-in-law in the family. There's 2 daughters, so rule that out. I still got opposition. The only thing is my wife's sister is in between #5 and #6, so I'm still #1, but it was in jeopardy this day. You know. Now, this next set of pictures, this is Paul. Most of my neighbors drive down this road 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, and this is what they see. And that's what Jack saw that day. But what Paul has learned to do taking pictures is this. He's looking straight ahead, and he'd come down about 30%. He hadn't moved. Took this picture, and then he took this picture. Never moved. This is what we're drilling into. You see the wheat's coming up there. Now, a lot of my friends like rolling their material down, and that's a great thing if that works for you. I really like this because I don't have to cut through all that. Now, I laid some down this year just to try in the demo. I've got a quarter of that. But here a few weeks ago, we had a heck of a snowstorm. Well, we've had 2. Now, I was telling some guys at the hotel last night, wind blew 50 miles an hour when it snowed. We had about 8 or 10 inches of snow. And lo and behold, one of my neighbors, can anybody guess what one of my neighbors said? He said, you know, it didn't snow much at your place. Okay. He said, I've lived on this farm for 35 years, a different farm than we was looking at a while ago. The road's always been blocked from our wheat fields. The road's recessed in the ground a little bit. You could see dry dirt in the road. He said, yeah, heck, over there at my place, it's this deep. I said, yeah, it must have not snowed there at my place, because where was all my snow? And where's all my water? And also, the same day he was asking me about that, you know what he's doing? He had 2 bales of hay on his pickup going to feed his calves on the wheat pasture. Some dry hay. These calves never had any hay. Right there. This is where we put some electric fence. This is another thing that we were experimenting with. And there's 3 things that really prove to us about organic matter leaving residue standing up. Not only are we slowly feeding the organisms here, when we shred that and put that electric fence down through there, it's all gone already. They are devouring that material. They're going to be out of something to eat here long before they're out of something to eat over here. But also, them strips that run north and south, you know where that snow went? Down there. That's going to be drier. We're pulling cores, we'll know. So you got to be careful. Everything, is like we said this morning, everything you do above the ground affects things below the ground. When we talk about impact, we've seen that over here this morning with the rain simulator. And my friend in North Dakota, Jay Fuhrer, loves to use the word armor. When you get a 5, 6, 7 inch rain, look at the sponge here. That's the same field. Look at all the stuff that we're feeding organisms in the soil. When Jay was here last spring, we made the rounds around the state. We had this in this is the same field. This is two samples that we dug up of wheat that spring. And Jay asked me to start with, he said, what do you see there? I said, my gosh, look at the root mass. Of course, the top will match the bottom pretty well. Just look at all. He said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I looked again. Well, this is shorter, and the soil is more compacted. This has been in cover crops 2 years. This is no cover crops. He said, that's not it. Look at the color. I was looking at it all the time. It's carbon. Just in a short period of time, that's what we're doing. This is the field. This is South Canadian River right here. This is that road. Now, this part of the farm, this was in 2014. Now, I was tracking organic matter before then, but we gridded that year. So now we grid the same spot so we can track exactly. My granddad used to never farm this because this is a sand deposit from the river years ago. This is pretty tight land right down in here. But he never farmed that because it'd blow away. We farm it all now. And this is under pivot. You can see the pivot line. And like I said, I don't know why we had a little glitch there. The organic matter in the red was 4/10 in 14, 4 to 8. I want you to look here. 65% of my acres in 2014 in that field was less than 1%. 2 years later, 13%, nearly 14 is less. 86% now is almost 2%. We've doubled the field in organic matter in 2 years. And we saw this morning, doctor talked about that a little bit ago, Dr. Williams. Look how much more nutrients I have in that soil by doubling it, another % of organic matter. Look how much more water we can hold in 2 years. Now, I like to ask the crowd this question. What do you see in this picture? This is my interactive part. Anybody got an idea? Well, we see my grandson, and he's telling his pawpaw what to do, I'm sure. We see the hills in the background, we got some water, but look at all the armor. And I'm like, Jay, that's not what I really want to get out of this picture. To me, it's black and white, what we have to do for the future. We have to store carbon in the soil. One of the neat things you commented on a while ago, one of my new landlords, she was 80, she'd be 86 this year. I went to school with her daughter. Didn't work out, I married Ginger anyhow, but they have a huge tract of land in the middle of where I'm at. Her son passed away with cancer. Her husband passed away with cancer. The daughter and her husband moved away 35 years ago when they graduated high school, and he went to work for ExxonMobil. So I started talking to him about cover crops and explaining about storing carbon. He said, I get it. Really? He said, we track it all the time. He said, you're doing exactly what we want everybody to do. I wished I had all my landlords like that. So we're putting cover crops on their place. But it's black and white what we got to do. Kind of depends on how you look at it. I like that quote. I see lots of potential in everything. You know, I like to kick in the box completely out. The blue cow, she likes to travel with me. But the point I wanted to make here was diversity. And everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people ask me, how do you decide what to plant in your cover crop mix? And that's a big, tough question, because we try to, what we're going to cash crop following, if we need more nitrogen, more legumes, we need organic matter, more grasses. But we always like to get out of the box a little bit. Some kale and some forage collards here. This was in November. Now them cattle that we took off that first test, we didn't sell them then. We moved them to another field, we grazed it. And lo and behold, when the canopy started going away and we got a little frost, the grasses all died, the collards come alive. And we made a lot of unexpected pasture very quick. And you can see the size of the leaves there. And you can see it's some wheat coming up. I left that field, we grazed it a while and I left it, and we're going to Milo this spring. You know, I don't know near all of it. I mean, we're just trying to learn, trying to go at an extreme rate. We know what we got to do. It'll work. It works everywhere. I've got friends in eastern Oklahoma want to plant a cover crop to get rid of water. I'm trying to conserve water. It'll work. I like the 3 C's, and I don't want to mess this up, so I always have my handy dandy phone. You got to make a choice if you want to take a chance to make a change. Thanks a lot.